Wait, let me see.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got a special guest, one of our favorite guests, in Ewan Downie from I-80 Gold. He's coming from us from an undisclosed location at the Beaver Creek Mining Conference, one of the best mining conferences in the world. Ewan, it makes me really happy that you do cut out some time for our guests, our watchers, and your schedule must be just packed talking to institutional investors, big mining companies, and high net worth individuals.
Yeah, it's a busy conference for us. It's usually this one and the one in Florida in February. Usually the ones that we find we get the most meetings. So it's pretty steady. And a few guys we got to trade off a bit because every half hour with the meeting gets pretty tiring after a bit.
I bet. Well, you got lots to talk about today. You had results from the Blackjack Zone, the East Hilltop, and Ruby Deeps, all contained at the Ruby Hill project. Like really off the charts kind of stuff. 15.6% zinc, 8.7% lead, 420 grams of silver, over 40 meters. East Hilltop, 15.9% zinc, 4.3 grams of gold, 284 grams of silver over 7.2 meters, and Ruby Deep, 6.9 grams per ton of gold over 50.7 meters. Wow. Lots to talk about for you there, eh, Ewan?
Yeah, it's like we've said in previous interviews, the Ruby Hill property is quite remarkable. It's pretty rare that you can drill a Carlin deposit right beside a CRD deposit, right beside a skarn deposit. And as we drill these holes, the hole you quoted 41 from today's press release, we went through over 40 meters of skarn mineralization, and then we hit over 40 meters of CRD mineralization. And then at the bottom of the hole went into 10 meters, over 10 meters in the lower jack zone of Carlin mineralization. So we hit three different deposit types all in the same drill hole, and really bodes well for the upside in this project.
That's what you call a Hollywood problem there, Ewan. It's kind of hard for people to wrap their head around that you've got a skarn, a CRD, a Carlin, all sitting, and there might be a sulfide deposit right beside it.
Yeah, right beside where we hit that Carlin zone. If we would have drilled to the intrusive, which we didn't in that hole, perhaps we would have hit another style of mineralization that what we call the Tai zone. It's what appears to be an intermediate to high sulfide system, and we're definitely planning to do some more drilling there because I think our first hole into that target, or I know it was 45 grams over 17.5 meters, and we really want to get in a position to follow that up here in the second half of the year.
You know, you and I have talked a lot about what makes things important in a deposit, and one of those is thick intersections and continuity. And this Ruby Deep stuff is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it runs along the Holly Fault. So as long as it seems as we're close to the Holly Fault, we get big mineralized zones. We're not sure how far south it's going to go. It remains open to the south and it remains open to the north, but we don't think it's going to go forever. And then immediately beside that, and in a deeper rock unit, the Hamburg Dolomite, we have those 2 plus 10 gram holes into what we call the 428 zone that we have yet to follow up, that we drilled last year. So that's another exciting target for us to advance in the future here. And it's a really remarkable property to be pushing forward. It's just sometimes hard to prioritize. Okay, what do we focus on drilling? And given the fact that we have an autoclave and we want to convert the Ruby Hill plant to a flotation circuit, we need to advance both at the same time. So it's not that we're not trying to be unfocused. We have to focus on gold and base metals here.
And how it's really hard when you're hitting thick intersections of that, like high grade, these aren't skinny little intersections. They're thick stuff of high grade. It's got to be like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, and we think that now that we've consolidated the Paycore ground to the south, it gives us a much larger target area to pursue in the future. We just finished up the MT survey over that, the extension of Hilltop all the way down to FAD. We're compiling that data. We're seeing some really interesting looking anomalies showing up. And at some point, we'll have to start testing some of the exploration targets. But for the time being, we're trying to drill, especially the polymetallic deposits, in sufficient detail that we can deliver an initial resource. Because when you look at our already significant gold and silver resources, none of that includes the polymetallic deposits at Ruby Hill. So once we get these up to resource, we are expecting a pretty material increase in especially our gold equivalent ounces with the addition of these deposits.
Because you've already got a pretty big resource of gold. I think it's like 14 million ounces. And then you've done a significant amount of drilling at all the deposits, Cove, Granite Creek, and Ruby Hill, since those calculations. So, and since then, you've hit a lot of high-grade intersections.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the drilling we're doing in some of the areas this year is infill. Last year, or actually in 2021, we first hit high-grade mineralization in the South Pacific zone at Granite Creek. And really in 22, one of the big focuses on us in the first half of the year until we hit the polymetallics at Ruby Hill was the expansion of that South Pacific zone. And we stopped drilling at mid-year last year, but we started up mid-year this year again. And we're pretty excited to start putting out the results from that program, because the South Pacific zone is not part of the current resource at Granite Creek. And we're doing the drilling to upgrade it to resource.
And you've made a big strike there, strike length and depth in great continuity with thick intersections.
Yeah, typically we're getting true widths of 4 to over 10 meters in the South Pacific zone. It's a very continuous horizon, especially for that property along the contact of the two limestone units. And it remains open along strike to the north. Our northmost hole was over 15 grams per ton. Our deepest hole we drilled was over 16 grams per ton over 15 meters. And the deposit remains wide open. But the drilling we did in it, we were moving it towards resource, and we were doing 75 meter space drilling. And when that was taken to an independent firm to look to do a resource, they said, well, you need to tighten that up even to get inferred. So we're doing a lot of infill drilling and step out drilling at depth, especially in around that 15 meters of 16 grams. We're just starting to step out there, and we're really liking what we're seeing in that zone.
Getting back to Ruby Hill, those key structures, they got a pretty long strike length or runway still for you to follow, right, Ewan? Yeah,
what we call the East Archimedes Fault, sits on the east side of the Archimedes pit. And then there's the Hawley Fault, the Jackson Hawley Fault system on the west side. We know that from the mining that's there now and the historic mining down to the south, that there's been consistent mineralization along that system, these north-south fault structures, for a strike length of more than 10 kilometers. And there's been mines over that 10 kilometers, 100 years of CRD mining along those structures up until 1966. And since then, the CRD opportunity was really overlooked in favor of Carlin mineralization. So the fact that we're finding brand new CRD zones right beside known deposits is really encouraging, especially when you look at the fact that the core area between the Hilltop zone and FAD is over 2 kilometers, or about 2 kilometers, and it's alluvial covered with essentially no exploration. And we have very high hopes that we're going to find more of these high grade deposits as we test that area in between.
You got a long runway to go there, and it's like layers coming off of those faults, and They got a long way to go. And you know what else I find incredible, Ewan, is these zones probably followed that path of least resistance with the faults, but each style of mineralization is coming in with high grades. That's kind of off the charts. You really don't see that very often.
No, and the fact that the West Blanchard fault in the Archimedes pit, northwest striking fault structure, other than the Blackjack deposit at the far east side of that structure, all of the mineralization essentially was Carlin type gold. And the Hilltop fault that sits probably about 500 meters to the south of it, same direction fault, but we're not seeing any Carlin mineralization along that. We're seeing CRD mineralization. And then at the both faults where they get up against the graveyard stock, which is the intrusive there, you get skarn mineralization at both of those at the contact. So I think we're still trying to figure out exactly why there's all these different styles of mineralization and why it's there, but we're getting the geophysics done. We're compiling all of the historic data, looking at what were the, were there features that were in the old drill logs that maybe were missed that we should be looking at, and especially seeing that the Hilltop deposit, the Archimedes mine, and then to the south about 2 kilometers is the original Ruby Hill mine, where FAD is the down drop, and it was also a northwest striking fault. So identifying more of these northwest faults, we believe, is going to be a key opportunity for us to find additional deposits here.
Wow. Yeah, it's really remarkable, those thick intersections of high grade in different mineralizing systems. It's pretty phenomenal. Ewan, I know we're running out of time here. Thanks a lot for joining us again. I'll close it off because I think you got to run to another meeting now, don't you?
Yeah, we're going to get down. Next is my presentation, so I got to get down there for that. So thanks for having me on again, Allan. I look forward to talking to you, hopefully with our next batch of results, which should be Granite Creek should be next.
Anytime, Ewan. You're always welcome. Take care.
Yep, take care. Thank you.
All right, folks, there you go. Ewan Downie from My80 Gold. I think that they've got, they've got a series of projects that I think are quite incredible. At the Cove McCoy, they've got over 1 million ounces of gold there that's growing at a grade of over 10 grams per ton of gold. Those are hard to find. Then at Granite Creek, I think they've got a world-class discovery that's sitting right beside a 25 million ounce gold discovery in the same kind of rocks and the same structures. And that's just getting bigger and bigger. And now Ruby Hill is has become the marquee project for the company. And I could make a case that there might be a few world-class deposits right on that same project, which, I've been in this business for 30 years and you just don't find those kind of things very often, or better said, rarely. As always, my shows are for information purposes only. Speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. Do your homework. I mean, to be with a company like i80 Gold, they're a sponsor. So I get to do a lot of interviews with Ewan Downie and create a lot of content, but that's really just a jump off point for you to go and do more homework by going to their website, checking out their news releases, checking out their corporate presentations. And I think if you do all that, you'll clearly understand why myself and Ewan Downie are so, in my case, flabbergasted by everything that they have. And I think ultimately that's going to grow them into a much bigger company. On that note, have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.